Hello, and thank you for joining us for this short film funding panel. I'm Julian Scott. I'm an executive producer, media consultant, and creative business advisor. And one of my major clients is Film London. I consult for them on inward investment and business development, focusing on animation. And it's in that capacity I have the enormous pleasure of moderating this panel. You may know everything or you may know nothing about Film London and what Film London does in terms of animation, but rather than me talking about it, let's have a look at some pictures. If I can get it right, there we go, start at the start.
This is London.
Mr. Gruber, it's wonderful.
Ideas come from.
Let's get painting! Let's talk business.
My voice-activated device.
So there you are, everything you ever needed to know about Film London, but were afraid to ask. And the panelists will be quizzed at the end of this panel just to make sure they were concentrating. Right, animated short films are a critical part of the animation ecosystem, be they a work of art in their own right, a way to showcase talent, ideas that may lead to something else. They're recognised by BAFTA, the Oscars, and a host of very prestigious festivals. And many iconic animators began in short films, including Walt Disney, Hayao Miyazaki, and Nick Park. So if you have a brilliant idea for a film, how do you get it funded and noticed? With me this afternoon are two givers and a taker, in the nicest possible way, to chew over what funding is out there, how to access it, and what to do with it when you have your hands on it. The two givers are Helen Brunsden and Maggie Ellis. Helen's worked extensively in the animation industry. She joined Aardman in 1993. She's received an Academy Award nomination and a host of other awards at major international animation festivals. In March 2018, she became the director of the British Animation Awards, and since 2019, Helen's worked as a production consultant for the BFI on the Short Film Animation Fund. My colleague from Film London, Maggie Ellis, heads up Film London Artists Moving Image Network, or FLAMIN for short. This one-stop resource provides artists working in the moving image with access to funding, guidance, and development opportunities through some quite unique commissioning. Maggie also explores opportunities to support creative talent in the animation sector. And as I said before, in the nicest possible way, the taker, Iain Gardner. Iain's 2023 short film A Bear Named Wojciech won a British Animation Award, was nominated for an Annie Award, and was shortlisted for the 2025 Academy Awards. Recently, he teamed up with Lupus Films to develop the pipeline for their proposed full-length feature Kiki. He served as the animation programmer for the Edinburgh International Film Festival for a decade, curating the McLaren Award for Best British Animation. You can pose questions to the panel as we go along through the chat, and I will do my best to curate them even appropriately. So, Helen, if I could come to you first, and before I actually ask you any deep and searching questions about the BFI Short Film Fund, let's have a little look at some of the work that the BFI does in short films. Again, and I can noodle my way through all this. And of course, for some reason, it's not playing, so bear with me. And I will, oh, there we go. I think I've got, sorry, folks. Let's start again. Sorry, Alan, your clip just doesn't seem to want to play. Whilst I sort this out, would you, we'll play the clip at the end maybe, but is it fair to say that the BFI is like the key game in town in terms of funding opportunities, or are there others as well as the BFI?
Well, good afternoon. Thank you. And sorry, the clip doesn't work. So yeah, we'll get it to work because it did work a minute ago.
It's my fault, not yours.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But thank you for having me. I guess when it comes to the funding you're looking for and where you're located, then there are definitely some other options. Maybe, I mean, after looking after the, you know, as you mentioned, the production consultant for the Short Film Animation Fund. You know, the budget is substantial, I would say, or it's realistic. It's probably never enough for some people, but because the budgets are between 30 and 120,000, then they definitely are more meaningful, should we say, to access. And that might be talent that's maybe looked at the BFI network before now. So absolutely accessing this particular short film fund is you have to, you know, have had certain credits to your name, or you have to be a certain sort of like part of your career, or a certain talent, you know, talent where you're at the ladder, I should say. So yeah, I mean, I think if you're located in the nations and regions, then we can look at the screen. I mean, I'm sure Iain can talk about Screen Scotland more than I can in great detail. In Wales, we've got Creative Wales. You know, I'm based in Wales. I think at the moment, England's looking a little bit sparse, maybe, in terms of some of the areas that you can go to. But you can definitely talk to the Arts Council of England, and I wrote down a sort of like a few others, really. But it was definitely looking at, or it might be that you're looking for sort of private investments, similar to, you know, my other hat wearing when I'm trying to raise money for series. I think you've got to be a bit more creative these days in where you're looking within the funding landscape, and you've got to just keep on thinking of different ways of raising money. I know, you know, shorts that have come from crowdfunding or equity or gap, you know, whatever you're looking for in terms of finance, gap finance or loans or grants, depending on what organisations you're looking at. But I'm proud to work or be associated with the BFI. And it's definitely the player that's the most looked at maybe in town at the moment. But there are definitely lots of creative producers out there who come up with creative ways of funding or putting jigsaw puzzles together of finance. You know, and it might be looking at local areas. I mean, in London's in the mayor office used to offer little grants, and you could look at, I wrote down Northern Ireland, obviously they've got a screen there, and Isle of Man or West Midlands or Liverpool. You know, there's definitely pockets of things. And my biggest advice is if you read the guidelines and it doesn't actually state animation, there should be an email to the office or somebody that's in charge of that to inquire about whether they are open to animation. And I would always recommend that people write to people to say, oh, I didn't see the word animation mentioned, or could it be open for that?
And do you think, I was going to ask you a little bit more maybe about the process of applying for BFI funding, but do you think the fact that the word animation doesn't appear in on the BFI website in terms of short film funding could put people off?
I think, do you mean in terms of the short film
Yeah, short film
funding?
funding.
I
Yeah.
mean, there is a dedicated page to the short film animation funding.
Oh, okay.
And then obviously that's the one I can talk most about, and is relatable to me. I mean, animation does, or the BFI filmmaking fund team does look at production and development funding for feature films, and you can always inquire via the website. And BFI Network is really good at sort of like sort of having some animations that they've awarded in the past. So definitely people have come through animation, and I know the intention is to run another round of this fund, the short animated fund, and I know there's active conversations within the BFI that are sort of like actioning when they can announce, or when they can sort of like what date it might be even launched. So I know that is ongoing at the moment. So.
But it's closed at the moment, is it?
It's definitely closed at the moment. Yeah, we've just been awarded the round 3, so we've been fortunate enough to run 3 rounds of them. And I know the clip that you're trying to run is showing a flavour of the 19 films that have come through round 1 and round 2. We haven't announced, unless it's individually, that they've announced who the recipients are for the round 3 awards, because they're currently sort of going through the substantial paperwork and the ask of how you get awarded. So yeah, and that is part of the process, I guess, is sort of like when the fund does open, then you're required to read the guidelines is the first thing, see if you're eligible, and you have a producer, a director, and a writer. They can't be all the same person. You have to have a producer. So yeah.
Okay. How many shorts roughly does the animation fund every year, or during its process?
Well, the last 2 rounds have awarded 10 in each round, and round 3 is similar. So it's definitely. I think in round 1 we also did a couple of development grants, but they weren't available in round 2. So it's my maths, but it's 20, but I think it's 19 actually in the rounds 1 and round 2. And there's been in round 2 they also funded or awarded 2 immersive projects as well that I wasn't across, I must admit. So yeah.
Well, listen, if I have got myself sorted out, I might be able to play this clip, which shows some of the fantastic work that the BFI has behind.
All the array of design, and so it gives you a flavour anyway. So thank you,
Indeed.
Julian.
Let's give it a go.
Fingers crossed.
I mean, that is an incredible array of different genres and different types of animation. What are you looking for when you're selecting something to get funding, and what do people need to submit in terms of getting the opportunity to get money from the BFI for a short film?
Well, it's fair to say that it's quite a lengthy process in which to apply, in terms of paperwork. at the end of the day, it's public funding, so you have to, have your paperwork trail. So on the first thing, so is everybody is encouraged to read the guidelines, and I'm just talking about them, and I'm sure other, this applies across, other funding that you might be applying for, and then you have to give, you have to answer a series of questions which are relatable to in BFIs to, sort of things, to their core priorities of them as an organisation and back to lottery priorities. But you have to give creative content of your project. So that might be that you already have a treatment or even a storyboard, and you might want to visually give a direct statement to camera about how that is. Production plans, budget, schedule plans, or and the financial plan, obviously, and then a festival and marketing strategy to how you are going to, because the onus is towards the producer, towards the team, that they have the rights to take it and distribute it and market it however they wish to. And that came out of the consultation that I did years ago, that everybody wanted different things from the fund. They, sometimes they wanted a BFA maybe to act as a distributor, which wasn't going to happen in that manner, but they wanted freedom to do what they will by themselves. And the forms take you through, your team, to describe who the right, to give CVs and biogs of writers, directors, producers, but also just answering those questions about, is your project sustainable in terms of creatively and practically? How is the EDI involved? How is the project going to come together? And so there's a lot of questions, and just to flag that, then once you apply, and you can attach as much materials as you have to the application, is that it goes into the BFI filmmaking funding team, and it gets sent out to readers. It gets sort of cross-checked to see if it's eligible for a start, and it might be rejected at that point, or people might be asked for, or can you just confirm, are you a limited company, or how is this project going to run financially? And then it gets sent out to readers, of which there are many at the BFI that are fully qualified to read everybody's applications and be able to put that into, for want of a score sheet of sort of like, does it mark against all the core priorities of the BFI? And then only people like myself, for example, get to see the results of that. It's not right. So I'm trying to say that, that by no means am I a gatekeeper in that system. Oh, sure. It is a fair sort of assessment of, and people might sort of like be asked further questions, or we haven't quite couldn't see this in the application. Is there anything that you want to submit, or so there's a to and fro in there of you establishing a relationship with the BFI person that you've put it into, which is a production at email. And then we invite so many to interview, as we have done in the last two rounds. So knowing that we might end up awarding up to 12, between 10 and 12, depending on the budgets that all those individual films add up to. Then in the past, we've interviewed 25 or 30 people, and then narrowed it down in that manner. And then the team are invited in for interview. Back in 2020, we interviewed them in person, but then COVID happened, so we've done the last two rounds online. So, and then this, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, but the film has to qualify for British tax certification and things like that. So yeah.
Well, I have to say, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, this is not a short film, but I'm about to apply for some funding for a feature film, and I have everything you've just said here. It's all the information that you've just mentioned is available, and you can go through it, and there's like you can sort of download an application form and work through it. It's lengthy, but to be honest with you, the support that's on the website that I've discovered is really important. It's really good, and I get the impression it's not like the BFI want to fund. They're not looking for fault. They're looking for reasons to support things and get behind things.
Absolutely, and the ones that have sung out in the past have exactly said that they haven't given yes/no answers, or they've absolutely know the inside of their film, or where they want to be in 5 years' time and with their career, and why this is career progression, and that's one of the core activity priorities. If you're seeing this as you want to do a short film and you're ambitious and you want to see it you want to go on to feature films yourself, put all of that in applications. It's really, the questions are there to really expand on, and to really know your craft and know your project, and why they will have impact to an audience, or how will it engage an audience, how are you, or maybe how you're taking a creative risk, all of that is sort of put there for you to expand on in your answers. That's what I would say, and sadly people might say, oh, that's a lot of writing, and it is, but also you can upload videos with you putting some mission statements together, or a director's vision, or a producer's vision, or a writer's vision of how you see the project going. So yeah.
Well, it does sound like a real opportunity, I have to say, and we might come back to it in a little bit later in the conversation. But I want to move on to Maggie Ellis, my colleague from Film London now. And Maggie, one of the things that you look after, as I mentioned before, is Flame-In, and Flame-In is quite specific in its offering, isn't it? Can you explain what that is and why it's an important initiative?
I'll try to. I used to be head of production at Film London, and it was a real variety of work coming in: documentary, animation, live action, and more artist work was coming in. And it became too big. It needed to be divided into, and it got different sorts of money, Arts Council and BFI. And we set up a scheme called Flame-In, specifically for artists who work with a moving image. And that was 2013 when we split it into two. And part of my ambition was to have different schemes. And I used to work on Animate for Channel 4 and the Arts Council as a producer on that. And I've always wanted a production scheme specifically for animation, and specifically to look at diversity within that particular industry, and for Black and global majority animators, because they just don't have enough representation. There aren't as many of them in higher education, but quite honestly, a lot of the people that come to Flame-In don't necessarily have a university or art college background. They come from different backgrounds. So we set that up in 2021, very small budgets, but it's a 9-month, 10-month scheme, commissioning scheme. And it's for people, for instance, when I say Black and global majority, African, Asian, Indigenous, Latin American, mixed heritage, people who have something, perhaps different stories to tell, work in a different way. They might have one foot in the commercial world and one foot in their, personal work. And we give 3,500 per person, plus a whole lot of other stuff like regular workshops. We've got a very important partnership with Blink Ink Studios over the past 2 years. And they've been wonderful for us, actually. Their support is worth much more in kind than it is in cash. It's worth a lot of money. So we've got access to a sound studio, Major Tom, that's in their building. We have mentors from Blink Ink, and we have workshops there. So, the filmmakers who are very early career, they can't be still in higher education, or they've got to have a little bit of experience to show us. I mean, I've found that when people come straight from university, whether it's the NFTS or Royal College or wherever, if they haven't done anything in between that final graduation film and done something, because it's so different in universities, you're not used to looking after yourself, you're surrounded by support. We need to see that there's been a little bit of direction there, but a lot of the stuff that Helen was saying is also that we get money from a different source. A lot of the the stuff that we're looking at is often story-led. It's just approaching it in a different way. It might be a different story. It's coming at it more laterally. People are often working there, I call them bedroom animators. They don't have access to a lot of equipment. They don't have to come with a producer. Some of them have come from the music business. Some are illustrators. And since we've run it, we've given 4 awards per year, and we've done 20 altogether, which are doing incredibly well. But we also have animators coming onto some of the other schemes I run. There's a development and production scheme called Flaming Fellowship, and we've had some pretty well-known people come from that. And we have a production scheme, and you can come with a documentary, fiction or animation. So the schemes are very open. It's very much independent filmmaking. But we're looking for the same things as Helen, you know, a good story, a good vision. Something that you can talk about. And I hate the word passionate about. I really got that passion, you know. Of course, you care about it immensely, and it's something in your brain that you want to make. But it's the vision, and it's good storytelling, and you need to show that you're adept in using some of the equipment that you're using. It isn't just for learning on the job. It's for using what your skills are now and pushing you on into, you know, bigger work or more ambitious work. However, I would say that a lot of the animators I work with don't necessarily want to go into features. You know, some of them work already in the games industry, in advertising, on commercials. So there is such, I mean, I must say that I've found when I give them links, I always point them to Screen Skills, you know, which has all that. It's got that fantastic animation finder tree, animator trainee finder program, and it's got an animation career map, which is incredibly useful. I mean, there are so many jobs in the animation industry. I mean, it's magic form of art, you know, and it's part of the art, film, technology world. But it's amazing, you know, the jobs that are there and the opportunities, you know, from, you know, concept through to pre-production, through to, you know, all the business side of things and distribution, exhibition and so on. And you're not necessarily, unless something extraordinary happens, going to move straight into being a director or producer, which some people think they will. But I've met people in companies who started as a runner, and you're not always going to stay a runner. You might move your way through different categories, depending on what your skills are. So, you know, I really enjoy this particular Flaming animation, and it's open across England because I get finance for it from Arts Council England. And, you know, I really welcome people getting in touch. And even if they're not putting in an application, they can get in touch and ask for advice. And we can send them links to people's work or to things where they can find things. And a lot of people don't know how to find the right festival, for instance. And there's a lot of advice that, you know, Helen and, you know, Iain and myself can give on that. And there's something called, you know, I could go on it for ages, I'll say it very quickly, Film Freeway, which is a central hub for the filmmaking industry, the independent industry. And it's the world's leading online platform for filmmakers, screenwriters, artists, musicians. And you can submit your work to them, and they manage entries for thousands of festivals.
Oh, right.
Thousands. And if you don't, you can look it up. I'm not going to go into more detail than that, but, you know, look up, you know, Film Freeway, look up, you know, look up the Screen Skills website, because they're both incredibly useful. But, you know, as far as I go, we have a very, very, very simple application form. So simple, it's like one page. And, you know, you list all the things that you want, like the vision, what your feasibility is, what do you want, you know, what is your goal for the future. The 2 pieces of work that I'll show, one of them by Toby Cato, he was more of a musician, but he started to animate at the age of 18. And he didn't finish his work for ages. I mean, I do give a deadline, but he went off to Mexico and was painting in a studio, and now he's doing more painting and music than animation. But his film, since he made it, has done more festivals and, just so many festivals. It's inspired people. And that's the sort of paper cutout. And then the other one that I'm showing by Jasmine Fisher, she said to me the other day, I don't want to do any more animation. It's too hard work. I just want to think about concepts and work in a different way and get money. I know that she will do more animation, but it's such a hard job and it's so time consuming. And artists in this country, I think, deserve more. We work to union rates and we insist on the artists having a fee in that for themselves. And a lot of them do everything. They don't have big teams. They often produce their own work, and Jasmine had 4 people. Toby, he does music, so it was all his own work, really.
Right.
So very different, but we do help with exhibiting it, and we work with a new black film organisation and have regular screenings every year at Rich Mix. Priscilla Rigways, who runs that, and for instance, Yasmin's film, I didn't mean Jasmine, I meant Yasmin Fisher. Her film went to Annecy, which was like the Oscars of animation. It is the big A-list festival, which is often very mainstream, but they do, it's available. I'm interested in audiences that can look at a work and think about it. It isn't like little abstract shapes just moving along, but it could be. But everything tells a story, and I think sound has become more and more important in animation as we've moved on. I don't think I would like to put a word in for, I've just remembered when you were talking, Helen, about Animate Projects, because that's another place that you can go to for funding. It has a series of annual open calls. They're usually themed. I think they had one called The Right to Roam recently. They're Derby based, and it's sort of developed out of Animate, which was the Channel 4 series that I worked on with Dick Arnall. They have screening programs, they have open calls, they have a residency. I mean, they're really very helpful, and I think, not sure if this is right, Helen, they develop work and some goes on to a partnership with BFI Short Film Fund. Is that right?
They have been awarded 2 films. I put a series of links while you were talking, Maggie, so thank you. I know we have lots of crossover. That from what you were saying, I put a few links in the chat for anybody. But yeah, so Abigail Addison is a really prolific, brilliant animation producer and runs Animate with Gary Thomas, and they have a great team of people there. So they did the debutante in round 1 with Lizzie Hobbs, and in round 2 they did Mariam Mahaja's film and Granny Would Dance. So yeah. And
I did an earlier one when I was running the London Production Fund, which was an earlier thing that I ran with Lizzie Hobbs. So there's all these, there's intricacies of connections, and I think in the art world that networking is so very important.
No, it absolutely is. What I'm going to do, Maggie, is I'm going to play your
that's enough. I don't need to say anything else.
The clips that you sent me. Hopefully it'll work, and then Iain, we'll come to you. So let me just see if I can share a screen, which I think
it's Toby's. I think it's Toby's first. Yeah, this is the paper cutter.
go. Amazing stuff. Thank you, Maggie. And,
Just to say that the last one, Yasmin's, she made something like 200 plates, about that size,
right.
soft copper that she etched into, and they all have a slightly different face on them. So
Amazing. Really, really lovely stuff. Mr. Gardner, I have rather unkindly called you a taker. Is that fair, do you think?
A little bit, yeah. I'd like to think I've been generous in other ways.
I'm sure you have.
I feel quite fortunate being back in Scotland. I did live in London for several years and got to know Maggie at that point and met Helen. I can't remember if we met way back then, Helen, but yeah, I kind of, as was traditional in the UK, served time in London.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel quite privileged to be part of Animation Scotland now, where we're trying our damnedest to ensure that people don't have to go to London. I mean, they're perfectly free to do so. But Screen Scotland initiated its Talent Builder programme this year with £1.2 million worth of funding from the Scottish Government. Initially, at the moment, it's launched for live action and documentary. They've very specifically excluded animation because Screen Scotland's actually undertaking a year's research and development with the animation sector, not just in Scotland, but throughout the UK and in other places of interest, so that we can have our own bespoke talent development and support for animation in Scotland, which may seem, I can't predict the outcome, but I think part of the idea is that we have a short animation fund, similar to what Helen was saying about the BFI fund, which is serious money. The short film funding at Screen Scotland at the moment is sitting around £90,000 per project. I mean, we do have, for people based in Scotland, there are some short film initiatives that are running at the moment. Little Pictures is run by GMAC in Glasgow, and they're funding films in the region of about 6,000. And that's, the Little Pictures are run on a scheme alongside live action.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is one of the things that the Screen Scotland's R&D is looking at, is this kind of subtle differences between the support needed for animation and live action. And live at the moment, the deadline's 15th of December for anybody in Scotland watching this. But you'll know, I think if you're in Scotland watching this, you'll know that there's a scheme called We Wonders, run by Visible Fictions, and they're looking for proposals for films at 1 to 3 minutes for a £7,000 budget. But yeah, like I say, yes, I am a taker. I've applied to many schemes in my lifetime, but I'd like to think that simultaneous to that, the role I had at the Edinburgh International Film Festival and being involved with Animation Scotland and knowing people in at Screen Scotland, I'd like to think that I'm giving back to the community by sharing my experiences and mentoring. I'm actually mentoring one of the GMAC films at the moment. I was mentoring some graduates from Edinburgh College of Art this year as well. So yeah, I'm not exclusively a taker.
No, I
accept the title for the purposes of the panel.
Thank you very much. I know you're not exclusive taker. I know you give an awful lot back. I am teasing. And you also very kindly you sent a clip reel over. And the reel that you sent, because I know it ends up with a bear called Wojciech, which we're going to talk about specifically. But just does this go back to fairly early in your career in terms of the animation we're going to see?
Yeah, it pretty much goes back to day one. I think I was quite fortunate in my generation. I mean, I went to the Glasgow School of Art, where no offense to Glasgow School of Art, but you know, they didn't teach animation. My friend Ross Hogg is bringing it into the graphic and illustration department where he's teaching at the moment. But it's not an official course at Glasgow. But I somehow managed to make a graduate film, which the amazing Claire Kitson at Channel 4 put out on Channel 4. And it really was a lifeline for me because I didn't realise that there was a pathway for it. I didn't realise that you could have a next step after doing this student project. But it was something that I wanted to reflect on under the kind of subject of this panel. I mean, since I graduated from the Royal College of Art in the 90s, there have been so many short film schemes that have come and gone. And I think as contemporary filmmakers, people out there looking at funding schemes, I think it's very important, because I've been guilty of this myself. You kind of have your own passion and your own ideas and things that you want to communicate as a filmmaker. And I've misstepped in this many times, but you need to understand what the agenda of the fund is. You need to kind of engage with what it is, whether it's talent development or whether it's greater exposure for UK creativity or cultural connections. You know what I mean? If every single funding pot will have its own kind of concept behind it. So you really need to kind of tailor every application. And I think I was guilty in my time of just doggedly sticking to one idea and throwing it at every fund. When I recall in the 2000s, I think the main player was Channel 4's Mesh scheme. And it was specifically to research and develop what was relatively new digital animation. And that was obviously what they were looking for. It was the main thing. And I have to admit, I think it's one of the reasons I maybe professionally sidestepped into short film curation rather than creation at that time, because I got into animation because I loved drawing, and I had no interest. Like the particular criteria in the 2000s just didn't interest me at all. And I tried to disguise hand-drawn films as like digital, because maybe I was like scanning them and putting them into Photoshop or something. But it was very specifically about like Flash or Maya. Do you know what I mean? I'm stumbling over the softwares because half of them don't exist anymore. But they were all brand new in the 2000s, and a lot of filmmakers were just engaging with them. So I totally understand why the scheme existed, but yeah, it's why in my filmography there's a bit of a gap because I'm just kind of like, oh, I can't be bothered with this. Yeah, but yes.
Let's have a look at the work that you sent in. Stop that there. That's, and I want to talk about a bear called Wojciech, because it's very interesting when you look at those clips, and the first sort of 3 or 4, which were earlier in your career, had one funding source.
Yeah.
And then you come to a bear called Wojciech, and there's like 6.
Yeah.
How did you go about, once you've got the idea, we're going to make a bear called Wojciech, it's this fantastic story, and this is the style that we're looking at. How did you go about approaching all those different funding sources to get
I hope I'm not misremembering. And if there's anybody from Screen Scotland tuning in, please correct me. But 10, 15 years ago, when I was thinking, you know, I'm not sure I can sustain as a short film director. There's just not enough funding opportunities for short film of 5 to 10 minutes. And there's only so many ideas in my head, but I knew that something like A Bear Named Wojciech, for me, there was too much material for a very short format.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I was aware of in Scotland was that there's always that aspiration of do a short film and then do a feature. So I actually lobbied Screen Scotland a long time ago, saying that it's just inconceivable to jump from a £10,000 bedroom film to kind of overseeing a feature film, that you have the aspirations to be a kind of international distribution, international audience. So it was a bit of a kind of long process to almost carve out a new funding channel that I could approach, and make a sustainable case for it. I mean, I think the biggest argument I had for A Bear Named Wojciech, aside from the kind of cultural relevance to Scotland and the connections with the Polish community in Scotland and the kind of historic context, it was just the opportunity to put short filmmakers that we knew in Scotland and give them kind of more kind of professional roles, so that I was maybe stepping up my game as a director, in as much that I was now working with animators over in Poland. Ross Hogg, who's a prolific short filmmaker and a very accomplished one, we assigned animation director to him. So that was a skill training development for him. Rachel Bevan Baker, who I just think is one of the best animators that's ever been. But Rachel had stepped back slightly from animation and was full-time teaching in the Highlands. And this gave her an opportunity to come back in as art director. And Will Anderson probably didn't need the work, but he composited.
Mm-hmm.
So it just made a really good test case to get a bunch of people who were independent filmmakers coming together to form a team that was working internationally. Again, and I'd agree with a lot of sentiment that came earlier. I don't necessarily feel that short film creation and funding is all about going to feature film. But for myself personally, I thought, I don't know where else to go now. And I'm not going to talk about the feature that I want to make, because it's complicated. Like, just getting the rights is quite complicated. But I've been nursing this idea since I was at the Royal College of Art. But I knew that I needed to kind of make these stepping stones in order to do justice to this 30-year-old concept. So yeah, for me, it was creating the opportunity, if that doesn't sound absolutely arrogant.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. But I think BBC Alba were involved.
Yes.
And various. So how did you sort of? And was it you, or was it your team, the team that you were working with, who went out to all these different funding bodies? And
I feel it was kind of shared. Again, it's like, and I don't know if this is helpful to filmmakers out there, but if you don't have the cards in your back pocket, strategically think who's got cards that you could play with.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my time in London, so maybe I have an advantage. Again, comes down to networking, hopefully being a good employee. But I'd worked with Ian Harvey from the Illuminated Film Company,
Mm-hmm.
and he's associated with The Snowman because he was an executive producer on it. So rather than struggle as myself, and again, no disrespect to my colleagues in Scotland, the lack of kind of creative producers. I'm not saying there aren't creative producers in Scotland, but the dearth of them is part of our current research towards the strategy for supporting animation in Scotland. But I couldn't think of a better way to get funders interested in this film other than, say, from the producer of The Snowman, because that was what I was going for. I was going for a kind of classic, timeless animation. So having Iain's name on it really helped.
Mhm.
I'd also previously courted to some extent Normand Roger, who did the music for my all-time favorite animated film, The Man Who Planted Trees. And The Man Who Planted Trees is another half-hour film, which I wanted investors to kind of look at and kind of say, well, this is what we want to deliver.
Right.
And again, it really helps to say, well, we've got the guy that did the music.
Yeah.
So Normand actually, in principle, agreed first back in 2014. And that was part of my pitch to Iain was, I've got this great story. Normand Roger's interested. Iain knew producers in Poland. Again, I'll stand corrected, but I'm pretty sure it was myself who got TV Poland on board, because I went to MIT TV and met with I just bulldozed to the TV Poland stand, and we had a teaser that had been made and just pitched the story. And then my Polish counterpart was with me, and I was just like, right, over to him. And I just kind of walked away. So, I mean, Maggie alluded to it earlier. I think the passion that we have for our projects really help. But equally, I think you need to know the pieces that you need to put in place. I think I've struggled with that previously in my life, is that I've doggedly just tried to break the doors down on my own. But sometimes it helps allying yourself with somebody who can open the doors.
Yeah.
Which actually makes me think, at the grand old age that I'm at, that I should maybe be working with younger filmmakers in Scotland. And I don't know, but it's just with you bringing these ideas to me at the moment, Julian, and doing all my research for it, I was suddenly like, why am I not doing this for younger filmmakers? So I might start pitching that one to Screen Scotland as well. There
you go. Well, glad we could help with your career.
Yeah. More Machiavellian ideas coming into my head.
I think
you've all spoken about festivals. How important are festivals to short films? Helen, I'll throw that one to you first.
Oh, I mean, we'll be here all day if we said how important they are. I just think they're amazing. If you've never seen your film in front of a live audience at the same time, watching the same screen, I think there's nothing like it to give you that instant feedback. And there are so many brilliant dedicated animation festivals. I mean, the Mecca might be Annecy, but I think there are, there's loads on our doorstep in the UK, from Scotland to Cornwall to Wales, where I am, England. There's loads. Manchester's just been got the one we're talking on today, London. I think there's absolutely amazing festivals, and it's where you can talk to like-minded filmmakers. It's those connections that you bump into somebody, or you have a sort of like you're there with other filmmakers. I just think is second to none. It really, really is, and I think also and you do get when you screen, you might do a screening in your local town that just by yourself. Whoever comes to that is going to have a different takeaway, and to it, and I think that's just, it literally is a great.
No, I'd completely agree with you. I mean, I think festivals, you need a strategy for them. You can't just go along and go, oh, goody, my film's being shown on the big screen. And it's perfect that you get the audience feedback on it. But there's so much research that has to go into the festival that you're going to. First of all, which festival do you go to? Are you going to have to pay a fee for that? Can you afford that fee? you research, you know, the work that's been shown at the festival, whether it puts much emphasis on a particular type of animation or not, and looking into who the people, you know, the delegates that for that festival might be, and arranging meetings with them before you get to it, and going to films that you know, you might be interested in the producer of it or the title, the subject matter, but really that research, and then honing your networking so that you're not, you know, sort of closing the room and feeling out of control of who you're talking to, I think is really important. And if you don't know, if you've never been to a festival and you go, oh my God, you know, how do I talk to somebody? Have somebody there as your mentor, I mean, or who helps you and just says, you know, oh, this is so-and-so, would you like to meet? Whatever.
Yeah.
And if they don't show any interest, don't keep pestering them. Just say nice to meet you and walk away, because you can often get pestered, but you just need to know when to walk away. But, you know, being ready, and often you're asked what your next film is. And if you think, oh, sure, I don't know what our next film is, you need to say, you know, have an idea of what you're not going to give them the story, but, you know, they might be saying how much they've enjoyed your film and what you're going to do next. And there's always things that you need to think about. But I think a strategy for going to filmmakers and which ones are the best to approach rather than hundreds of them, you know, and if you know any of the programmers or the people controlling the programs, that's always really useful. And if you don't, there might be one of your mentors, like Iain, could probably help with a lot of things like that.
Yeah, can I just quickly speak from the other side of the festival fence, because I did do 10 years as a programmer. And my main takeaway as a filmmaker doing that was that I suddenly realized that you should not, as I was wont to do, and I know many people do, you can't take rejection from a film festival personally.
No.
No one is singling you out for punishment, and no one necessarily thinks that you've made an absolutely abomination of a film. Steve Henderson at the Manchester Festival, I think, gave me the best expression about what a film festival is, and it's real estate. The screen is real estate, and it's very tight to get into. I think with Wojciech, we maybe, for all the festivals that we entered Wojciech into, I think we maybe only got a 40% hit rate. And that's a lot of festival rejections. And there are some that you're disappointed not to get into because they might have been part of your, I don't know, your academy strategy if you had one. But try, anybody doing this process at the moment, please don't take it personally, because there's so many good films that can't fit on that screen. And often your film's not been selected because it doesn't complement other films in the programme. The programmer might have gone for a slightly light-hearted, or their audience might be family. And if your film is kind of dark, has curse words in it, you know, deals with sexual content, then they're not going to be able to squeeze it into that programme. So just take it on the chin if you don't get your film in. Yeah, I think my favourite example, I remember somebody coming up to me at Annecy and complaining that I didn't screen their film, which ostensibly was about somebody having a romantic relationship with a fish. And by complete coincidence, there were 3 fish romance films in circulation that none of them could have known about. But I can't put in a 60-minute screening 3 films up that are practically the same.
Yeah.
So I've got to pick one. So again, just that's all I'd say. It's not personal if your film doesn't get in.
No, that's a very good point. It's sort of gently sliding towards the end of this. There's a couple of questions that have come in. There's a question, and I hope I pronounce your name right, Cappy Kurtaran, who says, I'm conflicted about developing my short film for immersive mediums. I don't want to limit its reach and visibility, but I also love the storytelling depth and animation capabilities that VR allows for. Is it worth keeping it non-immersive for a wider audience scope and career possibilities? Who wants to go first on that one? Go on. Iain.
Sorry, Helen.
Iain, you go.
I just wanted to quickly say that there are less festivals to my knowledge, doing VR experiences, which means, and obviously less material being made in that format. So there's an argument where you might have a better chance of getting into the festivals that are doing VR because it's a more niche program.
Yeah.
So that's one way of looking at it. You might actually get to the festival because you've picked a bit of a specialist area.
Helen?
And I was going to say that, yeah, and also, and you do have to provide a teaser that is potentially going to have to be your 2D or flat version, sort of like to screen, you know, as a teaser. So you have to think about it in both ways. But yeah, I would, if you think it's VR, then go for it, you know, and don't limit your reach.
No, well, I think, I was just going to say that it's probably going to be a festival that isn't just for purely animation, that it's got it's showing documentaries and fiction.
And games, possibly.
And games, And there's quite a lot now. I'm just thinking of Sheffield Film Festival, Documentary Film Festival, which often has immersive work, you know.
Wow.
So, and CPH Docs in Copenhagen has, you know.
And Vienna, is it Vienna that's got the huge, immersive side, isn't it? Yeah.
I was going to mention Vienna because their short film festival. I was just looking up, you know, numbers really and data for festivals the other day, and they had in animation they had 26 short films from 14 countries. You know, and I was just looking, and Vienna, there's quite a lot of festivals that show immersive work, but don't just go for the animation festivals.
Indeed, and there's a question from Samir as well, which is, most short animated films I have seen are creative and experimental. I wonder if it's possible to make a short film as a sort of pilot for an animated series, or even a self-contained story that has the potential to become an animated series. Is there room for more commercial short films that have the potential to become a series, or is it more the purview of Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network shorts programs?
And Iain has answered with Ignite with the BBC as well, isn't it?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I mean, you know, we haven't got time to talk even more detail, but all short films are commercial in their own way. So you know, everybody wants to exploit them, but just like try to keep going. I mean, what we haven't touched on is the lack of development funding out there. You know. For people. So in order to do what you would class as a pilot for a series, you would want development funding to be part of that, you know, as part of your package to take, you know, to show people. So I know we haven't, but there might be an artist in residence out there that you might sort of like that fits your bill, that you might say, actually, you know, I could develop my sort of short, which you know is always the potential to go into a series. I think to be mindful, some funders can see through that, I guess is the answer. They can see that it's potentially a pilot, you know, and that could be a pilot for a game as well. You know, it doesn't have to end up on a small screen in terms of a classical TV series. It could be end up as a game. So
the development scheme, which I've got, which is Flaming Fellowship. I'm always a bit nervous about when people come in their very early career and they haven't done the work into what sort of, you know, series there are, what the potential is for a series, who's going to pick it up, you know, has anybody shown any interest? Because if you do too much work and not do, as you say, you know, some sort of teaser or pilot for it, you're wasting your time, really, because, you know, companies are going to be looked at for pilots. But the development scheme that I run, which doesn't have a lot of money but gets a lot of workshops and a lot of people from the industry into it, sort of gives you a sort of realistic view of what's possible, and quite a lot of them are making teasers and short pilots, some of them very short, to give an indication of what they want to do. I
mean, in my experience as a once animation in terms of the more commercial Nickelodeon Cartoon Network, my experience is they always want a proof of concept or a teaser, not a self-contained story. So you know, you almost need to be creating I don't know, sort of like a trailer, if you like, rather than a short film itself. But we've run over a little bit, so we should wrap this up. But in thanking this panel, I just want to very, very quickly ask each of you to sum up what is your favourite personal animated short. Maggie, what was your favourite?
God, that's mean. Well, I don't have one, but I loved Ron Rake's work, Rabbit. I just love that film, and it's, it always stays with me.
Very good. Iain?
I have to mention,
It'll always be The Man Who Planted Trees by Frederick Bach. Saw it in 1988, and I just keep wanting to do something similar to it. So I'm a bit stuck.
Oh, I've got too many to mention, but the one that always I come back to, and I love Rabbit as well, and The Man Who Planted Trees. I like When the Day Breaks, a Canadian short from 1999 from Wendy Tilbury and Amanda Forbes. Yeah, really beautiful film. So that leaves with you for a while. So
it's a really mean question.
Of course, I am mean.
But I love a comedy called Dirty Birdie. So that's why you'll always hear me talk about that.
Listen, I must let you people get on with your Sunday afternoon. Iain, Helen, Maggie, thank you so much for all your time that you've put into this and research you've done, sending the clips in. I hope it's been useful to people out there. Moving forward, if anybody wants me to point people in direct, you can email me at animation@filmlondon.org.uk, and I'll try and push your question through to Helen, Iain, or Maggie if it's specific. But thanks one and all. It's been fabulous. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye now.
Good luck.
Bye. Bye.